Hey everyone, Brandon Taves here from Drumeo, and in this lesson I want to talk to you about 10 ways to improve your worship drumming. Now, I've been playing worship music in many different churches of different sizes for the past 15 years. That means if you're a drummer who plays in church, this lesson is for you. All right, so tip number one is to play to the room. Now, whether I'm playing a worship set or a jazz or a rock gig, I always like to scope out the room first to see what I'm working with. Some churches are very small standalone buildings, and others can be like massive conference centers or even gyms. Is the room going to reflect the sound or absorb the sound? Is there lots of carpet in the room, or maybe everything is made of wood and other reflective materials? Now, if there's carpet and other sort of absorbent materials in the room, you're actually going to have the opportunity to open up a little bit more because the sound is going to be absorbed. But if you're playing in a room that's made of wood or other reflective materials, you're really going to have to watch your volume because the sound is just going to travel and reflect around very easily. These are all things to consider. As drummers, there are some things that we can control. If the band or the person at the back mixing is telling you that you're playing too loud, the first step is to try to drop your levels just a bit. And if that still isn't cutting it, you can use some other stick alternatives. Like I have some hot rods or bundled dowel sticks here that you could use. Another thing that can help is using dampening. I have some Snareweights on here, but moon gel or even the tape and toilet paper method will work. Not every drummer can bring all of their own gear, so these sorts of things can really make a big difference and really won't cost you that much at all. If you bring your own cymbals, try to use cymbals that are a bit darker sounding. These will blend nicer with the band, and they're great for rooms that are really challenging to play in. Now, if you're playing in a much larger church, I would recommend trying to match the sound and vibe of the original recordings. Try using a really deep snare, something like a 6.5 or even a 7 or 8 inch deep snare. Large washy cymbals, like on here I've got a 24, a 22, and a 20, some 15-inch hats. These are all things that are really going to help you achieve that sound that you hear on the recordings. Let me show you a quick demo here of how I would play in a smaller room compared to how I would play in a larger room. You'll notice some different gear being used as well. Tip number two is to know the arrangements. Depending on the church you're playing in, the music can range from hymns and medleys to more standard songs with verses and choruses, and even to more modern arrangements with many different sections. Within all these song types, you're going to find arrangements in 4/4 and 6/8, hymns in 3/4, and sometimes even in 9/8. Bonus points if you can leave a comment below with a hymn in 9/8, and sometimes you'll even have quick transitions or turnarounds in 2/4. As a drummer, it's always helpful to have a few go-to grooves that you can use for each feel and time signature. Then you can listen to the music around you and adjust the bass drum or even the lead hand pattern as needed. Let me show you a few here of just standard go-to grooves that I like to use in my own playing. So there you just heard some go-to grooves that I like to use when I'm playing worship music. But here's the thing. Lots of musicians won't even know the time signatures of the songs that you're playing in. So be ready to make quick adjustments on the fly. This is a great reason to brush up on your theory so you can be aware of exactly what's happening in each song and be aware of what you're playing on the drums. Tip number three is to understand the lyrics. Is the song declaring something? Is the song reflective? Or maybe it's actually a celebratory song. Understanding these sorts of themes will help you make choices on how to play your drum parts. Now, if you're a church drummer, chances are you've seen the viral video of the drummer playing Oceans. So this is basically exactly what you don't want to do. This song is clearly declaring something, but there's also a story being told with the lyrics in the verses. As a drummer, just to come in playing as loud as humanly possible doesn't really make any sense. So your drum part should develop with the lyrics and should support the lyrics. This goes for how loud or quiet you play, and also how simple or complex you play. Drummers get in the way of the lyrics all the time in worship music, so in a style like this where the lyrics are literally the most important thing, do everything you can to support them with your drum parts. So as a worship drummer, your number one job is to help the congregation engage with the music and the lyrics. In order to do this as a drummer, the key is to have a wide range of dynamics in your playing. Know what's appropriate for the song and when. If you go on stage and immediately just start playing as loud as you can, those listening and singing along won't understand why you're playing so loud, and they just won't enjoy listening to you at all. That means they're not engaged. Sometimes playing loudly is exactly what the song needs, but there needs to be a reason why you're actually doing it. The takeaway here is to shape your drum parts to match the message of the song and lead the congregation with your dynamics. So I'll show you what I mean here with some music. I'm going to play this loud once all the way through, and then the second time I'm going to actually incorporate some dynamics. Listen to how the dynamics really pull you in and create some tension and a sense of anticipation. So one thing that all drummers who play in church need to understand is that 99% of the time, you're dealing with musicians who are volunteers. Even though you may love practicing every day just as much as I do, for most church musicians, this is just their hobby. Or realistically, they just don't have the time to make practicing a priority with all of the other things that they have going on in their schedule. That may be you, and that's totally okay. The point here is just play solid time, use your ears, and enjoy actually participating on the worship team. This is where it's important to have empathy and understand what your actual purpose is here when it comes to playing on a worship team. Keep in mind that record label A&R reps aren't going to be sitting at the back of your church waiting to sign your band.
We're thinking a $1 million deal, and we are firm on that, okay? That's our final offer. No.
So because the personnel is always changing each week due to people's schedules, it can be tough to develop band chemistry. So communicate effectively, trust your worship leader, and do your best to make the music as engaging as possible for the congregation.
Is this a good deal, you know?
Yes.
Is it though?
Yes.
Is it?
Yes.
But is it?
Yes.
Knowing how to physically play the songs on the drums is one thing, but it's also important to understand the flow of the entire worship set. Are you playing multiple songs in a row? Are you counting off any of the songs? Maybe there's announcements or interludes in between the songs. Or maybe you're playing with backing tracks and click tracks and you need to start each song from your computer. These are all important things to know and be prepared for. You don't want to be the only one who has no idea what's going on and interrupt the flow of the entire service. So be prepared. So tip number 7 here is really important, and it's something that lots of church drummers actually overlook. It's the fact that worship drumming is essentially no different from pop and rock drumming. Every groove and fill that you hear played in your favorite worship songs are also used in rock and pop music. Sure, there are specific things that make CCM drumming unique, but 99% of the skills required to play it are absolutely identical. That means that you can't treat worship drumming as a completely separate thing. If you're looking for ways to improve your worship drumming skills, you can really look to any pop or rock drumming lessons, including all of the lessons we have in Drumeo, as well as other books and online lessons. So if you still don't believe me, let me give you an example. I'm going to show you how the same grooves and fills can be used in a modern worship song and also in a rock song. First, I'm going to play a section from an original song called Clean that I recorded with Southside Worship, and then I'll play a section from a Drumeo play-along called Slow Rockin'. Check this out. So tip number 8 is to keep it simple. While some songs will have parts that are a little bit more complex, the majority of worship and CCM drumming is very simple. When you're choosing the grooves and fills that you're going to play, think about the rhythmic foundation that the song actually needs. Often this will be things like a 4-on-the-floor bass drum pattern, consistent backbeats on 2 and 4, and repeating rhythmic phrases. While most of your congregation probably doesn't play an instrument, and they may not even understand exactly what you're playing, they'll still be able to tell when something sounds off. So be consistent, play for the song, and make musical decisions that allow the congregation to connect with the music and sing along. Also understand that sometimes you don't need to play anything at all, not even light cymbal hits or even playing a shaker. Absolutely nothing. This could be for an entire song, or even through entire sections of songs. Remember, it's not about the drum parts, it's about the lyrics and the music as a whole. If you're not playing anything, also make sure that you don't look bored. Sing along, be engaging, and listen to everything else that's happening around you. The next tip is to pace the build sections. If you've played any worship or CCM music that's been released over the last 5 or 10 years, you've probably heard the builds that I'm talking about. If you're playing music by Hillsong, Elevation, Leland, or Bethel, these typically happen in the bridge sections towards the end of the song. Many drummers struggle with these build sections because they either peak too early or too late. The first step to playing these build sections is knowing the arrangement and the song form, which we talked about earlier, and approximately how long the build sections are going to be. This will give you an idea as to how you need to pace the build sections. Next, think about the subdivision or the note values that you're going to be playing and how you're going to use them to build tension and intensity. Lastly, think about the sounds that you want to use. Oftentimes, I tend to start with light toms and cymbals for the beginning of the build, and then I'll move into more washy cymbals and add in the snare and even some bigger tom hits as well as the build progresses. I really try to create what I refer to as sort of a wall of sound as it builds and releases into the next chorus section. One other thing to note here is that your worship leader may want to extend that build section. So always be aware, always be watching, and be ready to play another round of the build section. To demonstrate this, I want to demo the bridge section of the song Waymaker to really show you how I use these ideas to pace the build sections in the bridge. Listen for the dynamics, the note values being used, and the sound sources being used.
Even when I don't see it, you're working. Even when I don't feel it, you're working. You never stop working. You never stop working. Even when I don't see it, you're working. Even when I don't feel it, you're working. You never stop working. You never stop working. Even when I don't see it, you're working. Even when I don't feel it, you're working. You never stop working. You never stop working. Even when I don't see it, you're working. Even when I don't feel it, you're working. You never stop working. You never stop
So again, always be watching, always be listening. Think about how you're actually going to progress the build section and really pace it so that you don't peak too early or too late. You really want to time that so you can release into the next section at the perfect time. The final tip is to be a flexible timekeeper. You may be on a worship team where your worship leader has a tough time keeping the tempo of the song consistent. This means that you may need to be a bit flexible when it comes to your role as the timekeeper. Be reliable and of course, always be able to keep solid time, but also understand the give and take and be willing to flex when you need to. Sometimes during songs or sections of songs where there aren't any drums, the tempo can either drag or really just take off. I know I've been in many situations like this and you probably have too. If this happens, playing quiet quarter notes on the ride cymbal or something similar to that is never a bad idea. When the tempo drags or speeds up, the rest of the band may not even know that it's happening. So this is just a subtle way to help out the rest of the band. On the flip side, lots of larger churches like the one I play at are now playing with click tracks and typically through programs like Ableton Live. This means that you'll need to be able to confidently play with a click track and know the arrangements of each song inside out. Depending on your particular situation, your timekeeping role will fall into one of these two categories. Regardless, learning to be a flexible timekeeper is such a valuable skill for any drummer, no matter what style of music you're playing. I would even go as far as to say that this is equally as valuable as being able to lock in with a consistent click track. So there you have it. Those are 10 tips that will hopefully help you take your worship drumming to the next level. If you want to practice along with any of the music that I was using in this lesson, you can download the drumless tracks inside the play along section of Drumeo. If you have any other tips for drummers playing in church, be sure to leave a comment right below this video and share it with the rest of the Drumeo community. With that, thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you in the next video. Cheers.